expect from us is to be well versed with the basic principles of financial management. The basic principles of what? Before you go any further into deep of everything, what you need are the basic principles. Reading all necessary instructions included on both question paper and the answer sheet. There is a point there that, for example, 15 minutes designated for reading time. That time is given to you to read through. That time is given to you to cut the pressure, because the pressure is ever there. So when you enter, they tell you now it is start for the reading time. You study, you read, go through. Then when you're reading, you're trying to point out the basics for the paper, the topics now. Now you're trying to be well versed with the paper. Now the option time comes in. By the time you come up that question 2, 5, and 3, those are the ones I'm going to attempt. This is the time for you. Read and understand the concept, but concentrate on what is required on the individual question. The paper is as big as you see it, but the examiner only requires where there is required. So question 1 was, there was a company here called Twese Uganda Limited. It was dealing in exportation of vanilla to Asian countries. But this company on the way had problems. And so it opted for diversification from importation of what? From importation of vanilla. So what they decided to diversify to, one was passenger transport, and then another one was heavy transport business. So they opted to that diversification. So when we proceed with the question. The 2 options included costs. And the costs were maintenance, administration, and licensing. So the required part of it is, so I'm doing this because I know you have the questions, okay? Evaluate the 2 investment alternatives and advise the directors of TUL, that is Twese Uganda Limited, on the best option using internal rate of return. Evaluation of 2 projects using what we call the IRR. When you read the question and it has IRR, what comes into your mind? What comes into my mind is that RR is a point at which NPV is equal to 0. So interpolation is needed to find out that very point where NPV is equal to 0. So now this one takes me to another stage. If I'm to find the RR, that means it is a prerequisite for me to find NPV. And not NPV for one project, because now remember, we are evaluating 2 projects. So I need to find the NPV for both projects. That's when I'll find the point and I relate the 2 IRRs. To accept the project, that means its IRR must be greater than the RRR. The RRR in full is the required rate of return. The required rate of return is just that point. The company comes up as in saying that this is what we are expecting to earn, their basis. For you to start getting profits, that's the basis. So the IRR must be greater than the basis of the company. So that question requires us to find NPV, requires us to find IRR, but in finding IRR, we need to interpolate in order to get IRR. So the challenging areas here are determining the cash flows. Determining the cash flows. I'll start with the initial outlay. It would have been challenging for some few candidates to deal with a bus and a trailer. But the question was, the whole project was for 3 buses, and another project of heavy transport was for 2 trailers. That means it opted for us, it was calling us to multiply by the cost of a bus and to get the cost for the 3 buses. So this one becomes the initial outlay. What am I going to put first? What am I going to pay for these, to acquire these buses and trailers respectively? So I could see a challenging point there for some few candidates. They could go for only, we go back. They could go for only a bus or a trailer. Then another challenging area in that person was about finding determination of the cash flows. As the word is cash flows. So anything that is not cash is not supposed to be included. So when the examiner tricks you and put anything which is not cash, find as much as possible to remove it from what you're going to discount. We discount cash flows, not revenues. Because revenues put into consideration non-cash items like depreciation. Put into consideration non-cash items. Like what? Depreciation. So when you look at this person here, there was no need of calculating depreciation. Because it was not even included anywhere. So if the question was somehow, it means you needed to calculate and remove it. If the examiner said that in acquiring, let's go back. In acquiring this bus had been used and we are expecting it to depreciate in such and such a period. That means you could endeavor to calculate that cost will include the depreciation. And then you remove it. In any way, he or she could state it. But when it comes to your mind that the cash flows provided or the revenues provided, that depreciation is there. Which other, we have other non-cash, how do you call them? Items. Like provision for doubtful debts, all provisions. Because they don't include direct transfer of cash. Those ones we don't include them in whatever we're going to discount. I emphasize that so much because it disturbed me by the time I was doing this paper. Because you reach the paper and then it becomes, guess what? Should I include depreciation? Should I remove it? So it was problem for me. So that's why whenever you see me emphasizing, you know it was a problem for me. Compute the cost of equity using the dividend valuation model. compute the cost of equity using the dividend valuation model. In the question, there was a phrase which is down. It is the last paragraph. To raise the required funds, the company plans to borrow half of the funds from Exim Bank at an interest rate of 10%. The balance will be raised from the issuance of shares to the public at the current market of 20,000 shillings come dividend. The expected dividend is shillings 1,000 per share. This dividend is expected to grow by 5% per share. The cost of equity using the dividend valuation model. Principally, the formula is dividends in the current year over the price, then plus the growth rate. Now this question had items like the CAM dividends, and then the ex-what? Dividends. By the time I started, I feared those two words. Whenever I could see CAM div, ex-div, and I said that one I'm not attempting. That one is above my understanding. There would be somebody who is like me, as I used to be. But CAM div, it means dividends inclusive. Dividends within that price they have given, it includes dividends. Then ex-div means excluding the dividends. So the share price they are quoting means that this one excludes what? Dividends. But the CAM div includes what? It was as simple as, because the dividends, actually before we calculate it, let us address the challenge here. Let us move forward before, and then we go back a bit. The challenging areas distinguishing between the expected dividends and the declared dividends. That's the formula, that. So we have the dividends in year 0, in that very year. And then we have the dividends, which we call the D1, in the next what? In the next year. If I have this 0 today, those are the declared dividends now. Are we together? So when they say expected dividends, that's where you get this 0, the dividends now, and then you add there the growth, the growth rate. Yeah, the key to get the expected what? Dividends. That is a challenging area. Which one should I use? Which dividends should I use? Now it could prompt the students to calculate this in this question. In this question they are saying the balance will be raised from the issuance of shares to the public at the current market price, CAM div. The expected dividend, mark that point, that word. The expected what? That means these dividends were in year 1. So we are not supposed to use this formula. We are supposed to use the previous formula, that one. Because it is in the year 1, the expected. Year 2, year 3, it depends in which year you are in. So when they say expected, that means you don't know what exactly it was. So you add there the key. When it is in that very year, and the word expected is not mentioned, they could use another word to mean that very year. That means you will put the D0. Hopefully we're at par at that. So that answer for that question was simple. There were the dividends divided by the 20,000 minus minus the what? The dividends. Because the share price was 20,000 come TIF, including the dividend. So now we remove the dividend to get the ex-div. And then you add the key to get the 10%. So the cost of equity now becomes 10%. If someone did not remove the 1,000, actually he also gets the 10% because he'll get 9 point something, but he will be wrong. He can also be comfortable writing there 10, but hopefully when the examiner looks at where you generated it from, you'll see that you're completely off. And the marks hopefully will be awarded here at the 20 by. Patsy was saying that advise the directors of TUL on the limitations of the dividend valuation model. The limitations of the dividend valuation model. The limitations of the dividend valuation model. This model has what governs it. And every model, not only in financial management, has its own basis. So whenever they ask you to examine it, what does it imply? You need to go to what makes it. In it, you get the strength and the weaknesses. So with the valuation model here, you are supposed to state the assumptions first and then show its inadequacy. For example, it assumes constant growth of dividends, which is unrealistic. Constant growth of dividends. That means year in, year out, dividends will remain the same. But we've studied FM and we know that shareholders at a certain point, they will say, today don't give us dividends. We want the company, the organization to really grow and become productive. So the dividend model here will not be applicable. So there are so many. This one prompted you to have the knowledge. It wasn't guesswork really. You needed to know what the assumptions of the dividend valuation model. And then you go on to criticize those assumptions. That's what the examiner required from part C. Let us go to question 2. Question 2 had where we all start from when we start financial management. By the time I started them, it was still called financial analysis. So that was an interesting area. When you reach home, those people didn't know what you have been studying. Tell them you have studied time value of money. They say, what is time value of money? For us, we are from class for you at home. You boast about the time value of money. Everybody at least knows what is time value of money. And it is one of the basics in financial management. I've given you the answer now. The fundamental concepts. Time value of money. When they wake you from sleep and say, basics of financial management, one of them, okay, time value of what? Of money. So question 2 was interesting for me in a way that it was really applicable in the daily world. Because sometimes they tell us, why do you study the things? They are not even applicable. But now question 2 is indeed applicable. It goes, Mr. Mwewe, who is currently in informal employment, is interested in making voluntary contribution to the Social Security Fund in Uganda. He has decided on contributing 6 million per year for the next 30 years. The Social Security Fund currently pays 11% interest on all the savings per annum, it is assumed that the interest rate will remain constant. However, friends of Mr. Mwebe are advising him that he should instead invest in commercial paper, whereas he has reasonable information about the Social Security Fund and how it works. He has not heard about commercial paper and does not know whether he can buy it from any company. Part A, the requirement. Determine the amount expected by Mr. Mwebe at retirement 30 years from now. Determine the amount of expected by Mr. Mwebe at retirement 30 years from now. So this guy wants to put in the Social Security Fund 6 million. 6 million, and the Social Security Fund is giving him 11% interest. So every year he will do what? He will put the 6 in. And the examiner is saying, hopefully the interest rate will not change. It will be fixed for all those 30 years. So now he's telling us, he's asking us, how much would Mr. Mwebe have on the account at 30 years of retirement? 30 years is in the future. 30 years is in the future. So that one, by virtue of being in the future, it becomes the future value of annuity. It is called an annuity because it is the same amount of money this person will give him year in, year out. So it becomes an annuity. So the future value of an annuity stream will equal to the present amount of annuity in brackets 1 plus the rate power n minus 1. The whole of that is over r. The whole of it from where the underline, where the line is under r. So that's how we could find the future value of annuity. Because we don't know what the future calls for. And it is in our mind that value, money gains value year in, year out. Challenging area will be somebody will just multiply the interest rate times the 6 million times the 30. I don't know whether you get it, because that's how the question plainly is. But we must incorporate that element of time value of money within the 30 years. So after the 30 years, how much will this guy have? So you just input. PV is the amount for the each annuity, which is the 6 million. The R, the interest rate, is the 11%. And the number of years, periods in which payments will be made, which is 30. You substitute and then calculate. But caution is we use body mass. Body mass doesn't stop in B3, B4. It comes up to the professional level. Because some of you can start with the one there, with the other one, and one only over R. You know, it becomes tricky sometimes for some of us. You say, this answer is like this, and the other one comes up with another answer, but the problem was body mass only. Hopefully you have got that. So the candidate should be able to distinguish between an ordinary annuity and an annuity due. Whenever the examiner asks now here, from here, because the formula for the annuity due and the ordinary annuity, they're different. So it needs you, the candidate, from the statements the examiner has given, to distinguish whether it is an annuity due or an ordinary annuity. is. This was an ordinary annuity. Annuity due is whereby somebody makes payment at the beginning of the period. For example, those people who have good money, they could pay house rent in advance for 10 years. Sorry, for 10 months. But in financial management and economics, that one I don't apply with it. You give somebody money for all those months as if for you don't have something to do with that money. And it is house rent. At least you go and buy a truck of sand and put it at your site. So that is the annuity due. At the beginning of the period, like for example, we are in February. You pay for March before you enter March. At the beginning of March. But this one was paying at the end of every year. The end of every year. So that is the difference. So this one becomes ordinary annuity. And the other one becomes, the opposite is annuity due. So it's upon the candidate to distinguish which is which, then to come up with the appropriate formula to use. Otherwise, you could get it wrong. So we go to part B. Part B, there was strange concepts here, the commercial papers. For us, by the time we started, I didn't know about commercial papers by the time I studied financial management. But it is now there. And in the West it was there since 19th. So it is asking us to explain to Mr. Mwebe the term commercial paper and highlight the major types of commercial paper on the market. As you hear the word commercial paper, paper used, you know me, I interpret things in a simple way so that I get them, my head gets them. It is a commercial paper. We use it in business. So this is a short-term unsecured financial instrument issued by a corporation to provide funding for operating expenses and meet short-term liabilities. It is a short-term unsecured financial instrument. You are two people, you're two entities, but one entity needs money. When I need money, I will go to another entity to get some money. But when I don't have collateral, bagaga kwagalana. They know me and I know them. It is unsecured. No collateral is needed there. But just a mutual agreement, and then we do what? We write that I, Miriam Dagia, offer 100 million to Timothy Aheko. But putting it, I'm bringing that for you to understand it. But this is done between corporations that are widely known. And they are ranked in the credit rating A2, A1. Those who are widely known. Because even if he wants to corrupt you, he has nowhere to go. Everywhere is known. When he goes to Rwanda, Coca-Cola is there. When he goes to America, Coca-Cola is there. So that person or that entity has nowhere to hide. So it is a saying that short-term commercial paper is a short-term unsecured financial instrument used by corporations to provide funding for operating expenses and meet short-term liabilities. It is issued with a fixed interest rate, a maturity date of less than 270 days. So in these commercial papers, as I've explained, that's how it is. As simple as that. But it needed you to have that knowledge still of a commercial paper. And some of them you know them. These are promissory notes, checks, drafts, certificate of deposits. The checks we know. Hopefully even the drafts we know. It is a check of the bank. That one is like cash. There is no way you could say that you could default when you use a draft. We go to question 2C. Question 2C. Determine the present value of a stream of cash flows, providing shillings 100,000 at the end of every year for 20 years, and thereafter 50,000 in perpetuity at an interest rate of 15%. This was really Patabe. It needed good work and good understanding of it. How many of us have question papers? Because if you don't have a question paper, you cannot conceptualize this part. Here, all of us don't have. Here we have one week, you don't. Okay. Determine the present value of a stream of cash flows, providing shillings 100 at the end of every year for 20 years. Let us stop there. For 20 years. They are asking for a present value of an annuity. As I will tell you, let me tell it to you from here. For you to pass financial management, you need to have the formulas at your fingertips. Even though some are given in the question paper, but not all. So if you're a person who dislikes formulas, FM, you will pass, but narrowly. You will pass, but what? Now we have come to the present value of an annuity. The formula is the annuity, the normal discounting. Because we are looking at the worth of this money within those years. What does it mean? That today, how much do I have today that to be worth 100,000 in the future? That's what they're asking. That's the difference between future value and the present value. What I have today, how much do I have today that will be worth 100? Mitwalo kumyeri mumiaka abiri jinaba meka katinaba ninawo katimika, which is 625,900. That is the present value. It was hard for me to distinguish present value, future value. The future value, what I have now, what will make it worth there? When I put in the bank, how much will I be happy in the future? What will be its worth in the future? With that I have now, it is the present value. So you go to the tables because it was an annuity. That's what the examiner wanted. So you multiply and get the annuity. So now another part was thereafter 50,000 in perpetuity at an interest rate of 15%. Now we are trying to get the present value of perpetuity. Perpetuity, cash flow forever. Is cash flow forever. Annuity forever, whatever, but forever. So annuity of streams over interest. The formula is as simple as that. It is an annuity of streams over interest. Because they are saying the perpetuity. Thereafter, 50,000 in perpetuity, he will be paying 50,000 for good at an interest of 15%. So they are asking us to find the present value of the perpetuity. That's what the examiner needed. Now, actually we combine the two now. Because I told you needed to be having this question. Determine the present value of the stream of cash flows, providing 100,000 at the end of every year for 20 years, and thereafter 50,000 in perpetuity at an interest rate of 15%. There is a stream of cash flows. This person puts in 100,000 at the end of every year. But the examiner still tells us he puts 100,000 for 20 years. But after the 20 years, this guy sees that that is a lot of money. He reduces and puts 50,000. But this 50,000 will be for good, for perpetuity, for the whole of his life. So he's asking us to determine the present value of the stream of that cash flow. So you need really to understand this. In the first place, what we did is to find the present value of the annuity for 20 years. Then we proceed to find the annuity for, the present value of the perpetuity. We find it for the annuity and then for the perpetuity. Forever. You determine that one of 20 years and you determine the other one in perpetuity. So to get that stream, the present value, that means you get the other one for perpetuity and you reduce that one of 20 years. Is it really understandable? I can see the faces, some faces are changing. We'll read the question again. Determine the present value of a stream of cash flows, providing shillings 100 at the end of every year for 20 years. For 20 years is putting 100,000. But after the 20 years, he will put 50,000, but for good. And it will be, actually, the interest rate will be of 15%. So we first find the annuity for the 20 years. And also we find the present value for the perpetuity. That one is understandable. Perpetuity is for good. And then we find for the annuity for the 20 years. Present value for 20 years and present value for annuity. So when we get both, we subtract annuity, reduce for 20 years. We at 5 weeks. So we get the perpetuity after 20 years. Because the required is find the present value of the stream of cash flows. The present value for a stream of cash flows, combining those two concepts. So when we subtract, we get the present value of annuity. That one 50 for 50. Because now we are looking at the 50 and the 100. In the beginning it was 100. Let me not confuse you. In the beginning it was the present value of annuity when we are remitting the 100. Then we get the perpetuity when we are remitting 50. We are getting it now. And now we're getting the present value of annuity for 20 years. The present value of perpetuity after 20 years. Therefore, the present value will be the total amount from annuity and perpetuity. This one combined two concepts, annuity and perpetuity. And was asking for that stream, for the cash flow for that, for the present value of that cash flow. But to be acquainted with the current trends. By the time I started this paper, Capital Markets Authority was there, but was not even heard. Uganda Securities Exchange, we could study about them, but we could not physically see them. But now they are there. You can even walk in there. You see whatever you studied, the brokers, to see them, how they perform, the underwriters, how they perform their duties. You can visit those guys. But if you're lagging behind the current trends, some questions you'll not be able to answer. With the Capital Markets Authority and Uganda Securities Exchange, that is now the way to go. 5 years from now, we could be well conversant with that, even us, because it is booming year in, year out. So generally, you need to be acquainted with the current trends within the country. When you're acquainted with them, even these scenarios the examiners make, they get them from the current trends. So when you read it, you know, okay, this was deal now, their meaning. Brings you an understanding of where the examiner is taking you. Now we go back to general recommendation 1. Don't spot and crow. It is dangerous. Spotting is very dangerous and it is childish. Let me emphasize it. It is what? Childish. You know a child, when he grabs a saw, my daughter sings, and is actually spotting is also childish and is dangerous. So endeavor to read and understand the concept. Whether the examiner brings it or not, still you have the knowledge. But education of today, let me address my point from here. Education of what? We have ended. Of today, people are cramming, and I feel upset. Time yourself effectively for each number you are writing. Add up the expected scores before move out of the paper. I used to do that. I could add up and see how they are not. Now I'm dead. I go back to revision as early as possible. Because